Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Little quick project I need to do this weekend. As some of you know, if you've been watching the last video, I'm having a bunch of concrete poured at my house and in front of the garage and next to the shop. And I've got this post here that supports, I guess, in some way part of the overhang in front of the garage. And there's really no way to support this thing to keep it plumb and to keep it up where it needs to be because of all of the concrete that needs to get poured around it. There's really no practical way to hold this thing where it needs to be. So right now the contractors kind of shoved some cut 2x4 up underneath it. We can't leave those in because those will eventually rot, and I need to slam together some kind of a bracket slash post jack that will keep this post plumb, as well as keep it pushed up to the roof so that it's maintaining the weight of the roof. Even though it's not really holding that much weight, it is taking on some. I looked to see if there was something commercially available that would accomplish this, and there really isn't. And I've got enough scrap metal in the shop that I think I can put something together really quick. I really don't have a whole lot of time. I can't order something because I don't have time to wait. The pour is going to happen in about 2 days. So it looks like I need something about 6 inches tall, but I do need to be able to get it up underneath here. So I think we'll go into the shop and dig out some scrap junk and see what we can put together. Well, this is what I came up with, and it looks like a bunch of unrelated stuff, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a base plate that I'll mount this 3/4 inch threaded rod on, and then I'll use this flat bar here to kind of make a bracket to hold onto the underside of the 4x4, and then use a nut basically to jack this up. So I need to mark out a few pieces of this flat bar. We'll cut that out with the plasma real quick. But before that, I need to make some parts out of these other pieces. Let's run over to the lathe real quick and start doing what machining I need. I am sure I've overcomplicated this, but then again, that's typically what I have a tendency to do. Even though I'm kind of slamming this together, I'm trying to build this thing in a way that will work and something I can get done in an afternoon. So I've got this piece of scrap 1045. The other piece of steel that I had on the bench wasn't going to work for me. So I'm going to make a big thick washer out of this. So I'm going to drill this for a 3/4 inch, or I'm sorry, that's 5/8 inch threaded rod, some 5/8 clearance hole, and then cut it off at about 1/8 of an inch. Well, I never have a lot of luck cutting off with this lathe. I have to run it in back gear. Anytime I've tried to run this thing at a reasonable speed, I end up breaking an insert or something. And even when I run it this slow, I still seem to run into issues. I do run it with power feed, but I run it on the slowest possible power feed. And the only reason why I use power feed is just for consistency. So there's always a consistent cut. If I try to do it by hand, invariably what happens is I end up feeding in too much, and then again, I run into problems. I just don't think this lathe is rigid enough for high-speed cutoff operations. Carbide or high-speed steel or whatever, it just doesn't like it. So I usually run it as slow as the lathe will run, and then feed in pretty slow. Not the slowest possible feed, but still pretty slow. And I still run into problems. I have a 3-inch length of 1-inch black pipe chucked up in the lathe, and I'm just going to face each end. My thought on building this post jack is to build it like a machinist jack. So right now I need to make the nut that will help me jack up the top of this thing and push the post up underneath the roof. So I have this piece of hex stock here that I will drill and tap for 5/8 11. I have a 17/32 taper shank drill and a Morse taper adapter in the tailstock. I've been trying to use and find more of these taper shank drills rather than using a drill chuck for everything. I find that they hold a little bit better, and they're a little less complicated. A little bit of anchor lube on the end of the drill, and I'll drill this all the way through. Well, now comes the fun part of tapping this entire length. And I don't know what I was thinking when I made this nut, but it doesn't need to be nearly as long as I made it. I'm not sure why I didn't cut this piece of hex off, but realistically, I only need this thing to be maybe a half of an inch, maybe 5/8 of an inch long. But here I am anyway, going to tap this entire length. I'm going to try to power tap it. I know I'm a little delusional and thinking that that's going to work, but I'll at least get the tap started, and then I'll finish it by hand. Well, my tap handle that I have for this size tap is too long. I can't make a full turn over the swing of this lathe. So unfortunately, I'm going to be reduced to doing this a quarter of a turn at a time. I bought one of those sets of square drive ratchet adapters, but unfortunately the largest one that came in that set is too small for this size tap, and the needlessly too long of a nut here means I'm going to be at this for a little bit. Well, the next thing I want to do is clean up the ends on this 5/8 11 threaded rod. I'm just going to put a chamfer on each end. That's all I really need to do here. Some time ago, Best Arc sent me this 50 amp plasma cutter to use on the channel, and I will say, although I don't show it every time I use it in a video, but it has certainly come in handy on multiple occasions. This is one of those tools I don't know how I ever did without. It makes quick stuff like this really easy. Yeah, I could probably use a cutoff wheel, but I don't really care if this is pretty or not, because like I said, I'm trying to slam this thing together in an afternoon so that I can make sure everything is going to work right, and nothing beats the speed of a plasma cutter. So I'm really happy to have this in the shop. I do wish it was a little bit more powerful, because there's a project I want to work on, and I need something that's going to cut probably a 1-inch thick piece of steel. And this one right here won't do it. This is an extra plate that I'm adding to this that I wasn't originally going to use, but this is, again, I've over-engineered this. This is an extra plate that will hopefully capture this in the concrete and keep it from ever shifting up, down, or left or right. Looks like this piece here didn't cut all the way through the real quick recut here and it should be good. Well, these two short pieces here are just to kind of hold this adapter plate, whatever you want to call it, the bottom of this thing in place. The post, I can't get to the bottom of it without removing the entire post. And by putting these little vertical pieces on it, I figured it'd be an easy way of ensuring that it doesn't slide off of the top of this jack. So just tacking this in place. Again, this is not going to win any kind of contests anywhere. So I'm just trying to make this work. I really am not putting any effort whatsoever into the quality of these welds. It's just a project I need to slam together because I'm in a bit of a rush. The underside of this post bracket is going to get that piece of pipe, and this is why I wanted each end faced. So I just need to use some magnets here. I'm going to set this pipe so it's mostly vertical. This is not a precision, thing. So I'll just use the magnets to set it about in the center so I can tack weld around it. These are just going to be simple tacks. I'm not going to weld it all the way around. I just need it to not move and to be strong enough to where it's not going to break. And just a few tacks around the outside is all I really need. Now I'm going to take that piece with the hole in it and I'm going to weld the pipe over top of it. The idea here is this piece of plate here will be embedded down inside the concrete. Overkill. I'm sure I do not need this. Honestly, I'm not even sure why I added this, but the idea being that no matter what happens to the threaded rod or this pipe, hopefully that this little piece of flat steel will keep the post from ever sinking. Again, I don't know why I did this. Overkill for sure, but it's on there now. It's not going to hurt. Well, this is a new piece that I didn't have on the bench originally, and this round piece of steel is some cut off from a plasma cut circle. I think someone gave this to me. I don't remember where I got it. But anyway, I've got that threaded rod mounted in a hole I drilled in it, and I'm just going to weld this thing to keep it vertical. This will be the foot. So this thicker piece of steel will sit on the footing, the concrete footing that was poured underneath that post. Well, now I'll go ahead and put all this together here. This thing's still a little bit warm, and hopefully you get an idea of what was going on in my head. You'll also notice I ended up cutting down that nut because it was entirely too tall. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't need it that tall, and quite frankly, with it being that tall, it was too tall. So my washer and then now this bracket sits underneath it. The post will sit in that top part, and I've got enough space. I should be able to kind of slide it up in there. I think I'm going to drill a couple holes in these vertical pieces to screw it to the underside of the post, just so I know that the post won't slide off of it. So let's get outside and we'll try to see if this thing's going to work. Well, we're going to see how this goes. This post isn't holding a lot of weight, but I need it to be held up a little bit. We'll get these 2x4s out of here, and well, that dropped quite a bit. That dropped probably a good inch, which tells me that's not the roof dropping. That's actually the post coming away from the beam that it was pushed up against. I'm struggling to try to get this thing underneath here, and I think it's because the post actually dropped quite more than I thought it should have. And I discovered why, although I didn't record it in this video. The reason is it wasn't attached to the daggone overhang. I don't know who put this in before we bought this house, but the post itself actually wasn't attached to the roof beam. Luckily, there's a few other posts holding everything up, and there's not likely a whole lot of weight being put on this post to begin with, so I'm not overly concerned about it. However, I do need to jack this thing up a little bit taller than what I thought I was going to have to. So I need to back up a little bit and make some adjustments. I'll do that off camera, and I'll bring you back when I get this thing set in place. Well, it might be ugly, but it works. The base of this thing is going to get covered with some baseboard trim, but this should bring the concrete up to just below that bracket that's screwed into the 4x4 post, which means it'll essentially be held up by that pipe and the nut, which will all be captured in concrete. It's ugly. It might not be the perfect solution, but it is a solution.
Whatever. I think this will work.
Well, I can't say that went anything close to according to plan, but it's complete. The post is plumb, and it's secure. It's not going anywhere. So when they come out here in a couple of days to pour the rest of the driveway, I'm very confident that this post is going to support the weight of the roof and that it won't go anywhere. Honestly, I think it's probably more decorative than anything and a place to put the downspout. Originally, this house didn't have downspouts, which was part of this project, was to add the drainage because the water just went onto the driveway, which created some of the problems that I had to begin with. But all this concrete work now, I believe, is going to be solving all of those issues, and it certainly looks a little bit nicer. So yeah, this is kind of an ugly project, and I kind of slammed it together because I was in a bit of a hurry, but my channel is always about what I did in my shop, not necessarily how to. If you learn something from it, great. Maybe you learn what not to do, but it is what I use this channel for. So thanks for sticking around. And if you're a subscriber, I thank you for that. If you're not, hit the subscribe button. These videos are better. My other videos are better than this. They will get better, I promise. We'll get back to doing some real machine work. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.